Welcome to the LivXplore podcast. If you like what you hear, please hit like and subscribe. All right, welcome everyone. I'm Sean Payne, founder and principal of LivXplore Real Estate and Lifestyle, and I have again with me Isaiah Chass, our founding agent. Isaiah, thanks for joining us.
Absolutely.
And today we're going to talk again. A few weeks ago, maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, we talked about corporate investors buying up single-family residences, and we're going to revisit that topic. One, because I think it's really important to hound this topic and let people know. I don't think they factor in this equation when they're talking about how they don't want new homes built in communities that way. But I just think it's really important that people are aware how hard corporate America is coming after single-family residences right now. So.
Yeah, and I think in the past, people just don't have that great of a understanding or knowledge of it, and that's not their fault. It's kind of something that I don't know that corporate America is really making big noise about, because they don't really want everyone to necessarily know about it. But when people are knocking down the ideas for new developments, there's bigger implications that are going to be involved when they come in.
Exactly. And to go a little bit more depth is that, it's very common, especially in smaller communities. We're up here in Northern California in Sonoma County, and it is all across the board here, Marin, Sonoma, Napa, Mendocino, that the smaller communities, people generally don't like new developments that way, and often they are they're stifled one way or the other. Often communities will come in and basically kind of throw lawsuits at developers until the project doesn't make financial sense anymore. And again, I can understand in the past, there's people that are very concerned about growth. They want to make sure it's done appropriately, and that so that your quality of life isn't affected. That we have traffic issues in these smaller communities and things of that nature. And I totally get that. No one wants that new home development peering down on their home, and all of a sudden they've lost privacy. I understand that. But just like we talked about last podcast and this one, is that there's now a movement for these big corporate investors. Wall Street are coming after single family homes and coming after apartments, condos, pretty much all types of housing that way. And it's going to make it's really crushing the American dream. And as corporate America owns more and more houses, the housing market's going to react more like Wall Street. It's going to be very volatile, and we're already seeing that. Mm-hmm. We have more corporate investors now. Corporate investors for the last few years have been buying up more homes in America at a rate that we haven't seen in decades, and that's contributed to the market cool off. That a lot of the data said we're not going to have a cool off until 2023, and the corporate investors came in, and a lot of them started cutting their prices because they wanted to cut their losses off early and not suffer dramatic losses.
And they don't have that emotional tie like the typical homeowner
Yes, exactly. Who are usually the last ones to drop prices that way. It's something that it's very important that, in my opinion, it's very important when then you're looking at new home communities being proposed within, we're up here in Petaluma, but anywhere in the North Bay or California for that matter, keep this in mind that when you stifle that mid-level builder, not the huge builder, but the mid-level builder that comes in, you're going to throw lawsuits at them and you're going to stop the project that way. You've won the battle in the short term, but really the only builders that can make it happen then are the large, national builders that way that come in and really don't care about what you have to say. And as we're going to talk about in a second, they're the ones that are going to be selling to these corporate investors. And so what happens to the American dream when people, they just don't have the opportunity, the inventory is not there to buy homes that way. And so that's why I think it's so important that when we have these infill projects, that they really need to be pushed through, aside from the need that we have a dramatic need for housing,
Right.
Aside from that. So
yeah, I would encourage a lot of people also to go to your local community meetings for all types of projects, specifically new development projects for housing, and just pay attention to what's being said. We were at a recent development project community meeting, and there's a lot of points that were brought up, which I don't think those points really saw the big picture. And my point in all that is when people are knocking down the ideas for new homes being built, I don't think they're really understanding the whole picture of what's involved with it. And, you know, I think it's pretty highly regarded that real estate's one of the safest investments, you know, over the course of time. But when corporate America is buying large stakes in homes and real estate, then it doesn't make it as safe.
Right. And you know what? The corporate builder will be much more likely to sell the entire development to Wall Street rather than the mid-level builder that built those homes. Realize that like those national builders are selling those homes at a discount to Wall Street. So like the mid-level builder isn't going to want to do that. That's not how he's projected that project to pen out that way. But let's jump into like what's been going on the last couple of years in terms of like corporate investors in real estate. So in 2021, investors bought nearly 1 in 7 homes sold in America's top metropolitan areas, the most in the last 2 decades, and this is coming from Redfin's data that way. And so, like, if you jump down to like the top 10 metros where investors bought the highest share of purchase homes. Let's just go through this really quick because some of this is crazy. You have like Atlanta, 25% of all the homes purchased were by corporate investors. 25%.
That's huge.
Huge.
You look in your neighborhood and
1 in 4 homes now you have Wall Street owning the homes around you, okay? So again, Atlanta has 25%. Charlotte has 25%. Miami has 24%. Jacksonville has 22%. Phoenix has 22%. Orlando has 19%. Detroit has 19%. Las Vegas has 18%. Tampa has 18%. And Nashville has 16%. Again, these are just the top metros, the top 10 metros where investors have bought the highest share of purchase homes that way. So like a lot of you, again, we're out in California. A lot of you are saying, well, that's not in California. It's happening here as well.
Totally. You look at the Blackstone Group, which is their single family rental arm, Invitation Homes. It's the largest private landlord in Sacramento, second to the largest property owner, which is the county of Sacramento itself. Invitation Homes owns 15,600 homes, which is 19% of their total portfolio, and it's growing. And that's a huge number. I mean, you look, if you're in a neighborhood, either the home across the street or next to you on either side is going to be owned by corporate America.
Right. So like, let's just reiterate that. The Blackstone Group, single family rental arms, their portfolio is 19% in California.
Correct.
I mean, that's so it is here. That's something to be very concerned about that way. In Los Angeles and Riverside, they have an estimated 8,000 single-family rentals owned by institutional investors. And Sacramento and San Francisco have a combined estimated 5,000 single-family rentals owned by institutional investors. And this was a study found that was published by Emory University. Looking at population, the population of renters compared to institutional investor-owned rental properties, Los Angeles and Riverside County have about 2.4 million renters. In Sacramento and San Francisco have about 725,000 renters. So the institutional investor presence in Los Angeles and Riverside is 0.03%. So it doesn't sound like a whole lot, but it doesn't take a whole lot of, a huge percentage of the inventory to really influence prices. Again, that it just takes that one home in your neighborhood that's similar to drop their price down to what's acceptable to Wall Street, but may not be acceptable to that individual person to affect the values that way. Between Sacramento and San Francisco, it's a little bit higher, 0.07% of institutional investor presence in Sacramento and San Francisco. But that number is going to grow. California is not as concentrated as other regions, like Atlanta or Charlotte, things of that, where 29,000 of Atlanta's single-family residences belong to institutional investors. And they only have 235,000 renters in Atlanta. So in Atlanta, you have 12% of single-family residences are controlled by institutional investors. That's scary. And that's something that we really need to keep an eye on here and watch those numbers and try to make sure that doesn't grow. Right now, there's no public available data on rental property ownership, and rental advocates are trying to propose a public rent registry to track rental ownership, to understand who's owning the rental units, which I totally get. But the thing that scares me is like once this registry, if it's established, what the train of thought's going to be then is to put a cap on the corporate investors owning properties, which may be like a viable way to address this partially. But again, really the way that I see of addressing this is build, and devalue that asset. And maybe
which in turn makes it a safer asset.
Well, right now being that it's, we're not building enough homes, that's why institutional investors are really coming after it right now, because it's such a safe investment that way. And not to put the industry on their ear, but part of this is we need these infill projects. We need within these small communities, we need these smaller to mid-level builders. Their projects need to get approved, because they make sense. They're less likely to sell to a corporate investor that way. And right now, I just see this as like a war of single-family homes being owned by corporate investors versus individuals. And that's why I just think that every time you kill one of those little infill projects, these percentages that we're talking about are going to shift towards the corporate side that way. Who thinks about this? I've never heard one local politician or anyone local here bring up this issue, and it's huge. And I can understand the last 20 years, 20, 30, 40 years, it hasn't been topical. Now it is. It's really important. And what I'm concerned about is one day we're going to wake up and realize that 20% or 15% of the homes around us in our communities are owned by corporate investors. And it's going to be much harder to overcome that and change that at that point than it is now.
Right.
So,
how do you claw back from that? And going back to the point you made about it just takes one corporate buyer to cut the price on their property and that they're selling and all the homes in the neighborhood, that affects that. Well, when they own 1 in 4 homes in the neighborhood, then there's 3 homes on the street that they take that price cut, and then suddenly your whole neighborhood just took a 15% haircut on its value.
Right. You brought up a great point prior to the podcast that we should talk about build to rent, because that's what's going on too, is that, you have Lennar, huge national home builder, one of the biggest, I don't know if not, one of the top 3 biggest, I believe. And what's happened is that home buyer sentiment has dropped because the economy is dropping. Excuse me. In the last economic downturn, we suffered from the foreclosure crisis, and a lot of home builders got really beat up. So they're very conscious of economic downturns at this point. Lennar has now offered 5,000 new single-family home builds to corporate investors. So they're kind of hedging their bets. Hey, we're building these homes out right now. Why don't we just sell them off to a corporate investor at a discount? And that allows us to continue to build. And, they'll identify what communities they should sell to individuals and corporate investors and that. But again, that's not a good trend to continue. So now we have, the larger national builders that are selling off these single-family residents, not as not being sold to individuals, but they're being built to rent them out for the long term that way.
Right.
And so this is going to continue. This trend is going to continue. J.P. Morgan is about to spend $1 billion on rental homes across the U.S.
That's billion with a B.
Yeah, it's $1 billion. They want to become a mega landlord, and this is coming from Business Insider. That way, just an article I found a couple weeks ago. But again, J.P. Morgan is about to spend $1 billion of buying hundreds of rentals across the United States. And just to give you an idea here, when we're talking about build to rent, I think half of that is allocated to buy newer home construction. Let's see, the Duo plans. Let's see. The first installment will include a purchase of 250 homes in 3 communities around Atlanta. So again, Atlanta, that's a whole nother podcast of why they're choosing certain areas. But you can see that they're going hard at the Atlanta area. But eventually that'll come out here. And again, this is just one article talking about JP Morgan, but we talked about this in the last podcast. Wall Street, the venture capitalists, they're pulling funds together. JP Morgan is not the only one doing this.
You could run a Google search for corporate buyers of residential real estate, and you'll come across 15 companies right off the bat that are doing it with anywhere from 10 million to 100 million to $1 billion worth of capital getting funneled into those channels.
Right. Yeah. And so again, how do we address this? A lot of people are going to say, hey, well, let's just, the easy solution is just to cap the corporate buyers. One, that doesn't really fix the housing issue. Maybe it's just allowing the smaller and mid-level builders to build and not cause so many problems, because those are the people that are really, those are the builders that tend to listen more to the community about what the community wants and needs and works with the community. And again, what we're doing right now is we're going to have nothing but national builders around us at some point, and they're going to start selling to corporate America. And what happens to the American dream at that point?
Right.
So, so that's kind of my spiel that way.
Yeah, same as the last podcast. I just urge people to do their homework, know what's going on, learn more about what's going on, and when you hear people with opposition to new projects, educate them, if you're listening to this, on what the alternative looks like.
Yeah, exactly. And factor this in, when you're talking about, I don't want this home community here because of traffic, things of that nature, think that it's going to be, we stifle enough of these projects, it's going to be very hard for smaller communities, for people to purchase homes in the future. I'm really scared about what the landscape looks like in 10 or 15 years from now. So if this trend continues that way.
Right.
Well, I think that pretty much concludes it. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. If you enjoyed this, please hit like and subscribe, and so that you see future episodes. My name is Sean Payne. I'm the founder and principal of LivXplore Real Estate and Lifestyle, located in downtown Petaluma, and Isaiah Chass, our founding agent here. Thank you very much again for joining us.
Absolutely. If you guys have any questions, please reach out and ask us any questions that you have.
Yep, we're here for you. So thanks again, and talk to you soon.
See you guys.
Welcome to the LivXplore podcast. If you like what you hear, please hit like and subscribe.